We haven't, not starting anything official. Can I do conflict of interest in that before 1?
I assume so.
Yeah. Can do this part before 1, right? What?
Hearing start at 1, we can do conflict now. Can you hear me?
Sort of. Use the mic. Please.
Okay. I said you can do conflicts now and start the hearings at 1.
Perfect. All right, so if this is your first time joining us, a quick rundown on how we'll handle each case. We'll have city staff present the case to us. We'll have an opportunity to ask them questions as commissioners. Then we'll invite the applicant up if there's any other details they want to share with us. After that, we'll do a public hearing for each case individually and close the public hearing, invite the applicant back up to address anything that was raised, and then have our deliberation and discussion before making a decision and moving on to our next case. Let's see, any housekeeping? No. Any conflicts of interest today, commissioners?
I'd like to identify a potential conflict of interest on case number 5E, 816 Madison Avenue Southeast. Women's Resource Center is a body that I have served as a honorary chairman of the most recent capital campaign connected to this particular building and location. So I have been leveraging or using my personal relationships and connections to attempt to raise money for this, for the applicant.
Any questions on that? All right, then we'll need a motion.
I so move that we accept the commissioner's abstaining.
Can you say it into the, can you turn your mic on and say it again? Thanks.
I move that we accept Commissioner Beeler's conflict of interest notice to not participate in the vote on the 816 Madison Avenue item.
Support. Okay, any discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Any other potential conflicts today? Okay, let's get started with our first cases.
The first item on the agenda is 1512 Fuller Avenue Southeast, a proposed parking lot. We'd like to present this concurrently with an associated case, 1534 Kalamazoo Avenue Southeast. They are both by the same applicant and they are related. So we would ask that that we present them together and hold a concurrent public hearing. I'll start with 1512 Fuller Avenue Southeast, which is a former self-service car wash. It's at the corner of Fuller and Ramona. This site is proposed for a surface parking lot. It's located in the TN TBA zone district, and that's the reason it's before you today for special land use approval, as surface parking lots require approval in the TBA. This is a slide of the proposed parking lot. This slide includes the landscaping. The parking lot will have 41 parking spaces, and they're proposed to support the use in the next case that I will be explaining. The parking lot has been reviewed by our traffic engineers, and they have found the location of the drive, the ingress and egress drive, to be appropriate, and the plan will be reviewed for final details for landscaping and any potential lighting, pardon me, at permitting if approved today. associated with the parking lot is the primary use. Amplified GR is requesting approval for the renovation and expansion of an existing building that was formerly a church for the use of medical office and the Boston Square Community Hub, which will include a child care center, community center, including offices, and a multi-purpose room, which I noticed as a banquet facility because of the potential for it to be rented out for private events. The slides that I'm showing you right now are Google Street View slides of, or images of the facility. The green roofed portion is a single-story building. This was the original church. The remainder was a church that was the addition to the church that was approved later, and I've forgotten the year, but it's in the staff report, 2008. It's a concrete block building, and as you can see, there aren't very many windows on the street frontages. The windows are facing the parking lot. And the proposed uses, or let me back up here as I continue on. This is part of the Boston Square Together plan. The subject building is the community hub at the bottom here at Ramona. The floor plan or site plan for the building is a little bit different than what is shown on this plan, but it's essentially the same as the plan, as what the applicant has been proposing for a number of years now. It's associated with the planned redevelopment district approved by the Planning Commission and City Commission a few years ago. The community hub is intended to be adjacent to a public park that it will be dedicated to the city as a public park. This is the PRD that was approved by the Planning Commission, and that plan also showed the community hub and associated parking lot. The parking lot, freestanding parking lot that I mentioned previously is right here on the right side. That wasn't originally part of the plan, but now additional parking is proposed. This is, these are a couple of images of the exterior of the building and the interior of the building. This is a site plan of what is proposed. As you can see, there's a proposed Evergreen extension that doesn't currently exist. As you can see on the slide here, there's an existing building, modern hardware is here. So these are some future plans. And as I understand it, the Evergreen extension is proposed in 2 phases, with the easterly portion, or the easterly half, to be constructed first, and the westerly portion to be constructed later. That construction would allow ingress and egress to the parking lot associated with the hub, as well as this north parking lot on the PRD property that has always been intended to support the use that we're talking about today. The project will occur in phases. Phase 1 will include the larger block portion of the building. They plan on raising the roof, I think 5 or 6 feet, to facilitate 2 full stories. This, the original building, the smaller building, that will later be demolished, and a medical, 2-story medical office use is proposed. I The uses include a community center, which will house a number of nonprofit spaces, as well as some co-working spaces, and as well as the amplified GR offices. Also included in that community center is a cafe. That was not included in the notice because it's a permitted use. And we just considered that to be part of the community center. There's also a multi-purpose room that can accommodate up to 240 people. They do propose to allow that to be rentaled, but they'll also be having community events there as well. In your hard copy of the resolution, the typical banquet hall conditions of approval are included. Relative to parking, the applicant prepared a parking analysis. A total of 126 parking spaces are required for all the uses operating at full capacity. They are proposing a total of 94 parking spaces in the 3 parking lots, the one on site, the one across the street to the east that's also under consideration in this request, and to the north in the PRD. So they'll need a waiver of about, I think I wrote 32 spaces in the staff report. I think it's actually 34 spaces. There was a discrepancy in the number of parking spaces in the lot across the street. So they need a waiver of 34 spaces. And if the Planning Commission finds it appropriate, that can be addressed through a waiver with on-site parking and public transit. I'd also draw your attention to the parking reduction standards. That you can consider the timing of parking use relative to other uses in the area, including operational needs of the various uses. In this case, I think the daycare and maybe the full capacity of the multi-purpose room will not be concurrent. So those are some things to keep in mind. I will move on to the building elements. I'll defer to the applicant to talk about the building elements, but you might notice that they are asking for a waiver of some transparency. I would like to point out they are adding a significant number of windows. The building has very few windows except on the north side, and they'll be punching in a number of windows. They will be asking for a waiver for the area on the south elevation, and that's where that assembly space is. So the Planning Commission does have the discretion to allow this. I would also point out they're asking for a waiver of orientation. They're asking to be oriented to the north, which is toward the proposed public park, which they're considering the living room. So the Planning Commission does have the discretion to allow that. I will turn it over to the applicant to talk about anything that I've missed, and I did ask them to bring some material samples for you because I think they're planning on a material that is something that I'm not familiar with, at least.
All right, thanks.
Great. Thank you, Elizabeth. Good afternoon, Planning Commission. My name is John Ipple. I'm the Executive Director at Amplify GR. Elizabeth did a great job of providing a comprehensive overview of what's been 4 years of active engagement and collaboration with the Boston Square neighborhood. And so we've been working in deep partnership with the Neighborhood Association, Oakdale Neighbors, and other parts of the city of Grand Rapids through the community partnership agreement that we've entered into. So the community hub is kind of the anchor, the cultural anchor of the Boston's Together plan that you've been a part of over the last couple of years. And so we're really excited about the various different uses that are being integrated that really have been lifted up by what neighbors have been asking for, and in some cases for decades. And so we will be partnering with IFF and the Early Learning Neighborhood Collaborative to have a high-quality early learning center for children 6 weeks of age to 5 years that will have about 80 slots available there, and really with a heart and a focus on serving the children that are in close proximity to that location, and also be mixed income in nature. And then secondly, we are continuing conversations with a fairly extensive partnership on a medical and health partnership. And so we're not quite ready to publicly announce that part yet, but that will be another part that really springs from ongoing conversations about some of the significant social and health disparities that exist in the neighborhoods that we serve. And so we're excited about advancing that work as well. And then the third kind of bucket of work that we kind of refer to as the community center is really those other kind of ancillary and nonprofit components that have also been lifted up. And so things that we imagine happening there are after-school programming, workforce development, the co-working spaces, so supporting local and emerging entrepreneurs, and then of course this multi-purpose room that really is intended to serve all those different partners as well as other neighbors that may have different needs. And so whether it be a fundraiser, whether it be a neighborhood meeting, et cetera, it's really meant to serve a variety of different capacities in addition to things such as concerts and plays and things of that nature. So in all, we're pretty excited about what this project is going to help advance as part of the broader Boston Square Together plan. And if there's any questions or more technical questions, certainly we can refer to the full development team that's here to help support and answer some of those questions. Maybe Elizabeth, if there was a specific question on some of the materials, Marie, maybe if you want to just share some of those quickly as well, we could do that.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marie Coney with Urban Works Architects. We're out of Chicago, but we're the lead design architect on this project. So I can talk a little bit about the design if you have any questions on that. So we are recladding the existing exterior of the 1534 pre-engineered metal building with a new rain screen facade. So we're adding a lot of transparency, and then we're brightening up the building with a whole new facade material. And Elizabeth asked us to bring some material samples today because it is not exactly a typical material, but it's nothing new. It's a phenolic resin panel that it's a smooth-faced rain screen panel that acts similar to like a fiber cement would. If anyone would like to pass it around, you're welcome to. Pass it this way.
If you could just hand it to Commissioner Germain, that'd be great.
Sure. So it's a very durable, weather-resistant product. It's cellulose fibers bound together with resins, and it does meet the fire code requirements. So I don't know if I can't exactly see it in this picture. There we go. The elevations. So we'll have various widths of these panels to create kind of a alternating pattern down the facade, and then we're going to introduce an accent color, possibly that green color, to some of the awnings and to highlight the daycare area with a more colorful area. We did receive some feedback from the neighbors that they wanted to see more color, so we responded to that by introducing an accent color.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, any questions for the applicants?
Just one. So I know that you're asking to be oriented to the north instead of the south, but I wanted to clarify, and I think I see them in the plans. There are entrances to the building on the south.
So the south is Ramona Street, and so that will have service entries into it.
Okay.
But really the way that we're kind of envisioning it is the north side will be the main entrance, and then there'll be some level of entrance closer to Kalamazoo as well, is what we kind of imagine being more of the side B. Ramona being more of what we'd say like the side C, the service side.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
To that point, could you just take us through the south elevation in particular, because that's a large wall that faces the public And I know you're asking for transparency that's less than what's required on the first floor, but you're proposing extra on the second floor. But could you just make it very clear what's going on the south elevation?
Sure. So we're requesting relief of the transparency requirements there just by a little bit because the uses that we're proposing for the programs inside don't really support a lot of transparency. We've got medical clinic space on the first floor on the far west side, excuse me. So we've kind of done limited glazing there. The second floor of that far west side would be more community wellness spaces. So we introduced as much transparency as we could there. In the kind of the middle area where you don't see a lot of windows, that's the multi-purpose event space. And it's a double height space. So we've got glazing at the top so that daylight comes in, but you don't want that distraction of views on the first floor. And then on the far right side is the daycare with some back of house loading areas and maintenance areas. And then the second floor on the far east side are the community partnership spaces for the community hub.
Looks like there's several feet between the face of the wall and the sidewalk along that elevation, and I'm wondering if there's opportunities to add some landscaping to break up that facade wall that's relatively blank where the multipurpose room is. Is that an opportunity there?
There is some areas that we could introduce more landscaping. It's pretty tight to the sidewalk, but.
I drove by there. I'm talking about the parking lot and not this building, but I think it was an empty lot. It's rather grassy, and it had a lot of picnic tables on it. Is that the same lot?
So it's actually on the opposite side of the building. So where the
okay.
picnic tables are today is the Boston Square Parklet, is what we call it. It's the temporary park.
Okay.
And so the goal is that Modern Hardware would eventually move across the street to where that's located, and then the city-owned park would eventually essentially swap to where Modern Hardware is today. So that would be kind of the next phase after we get this and a couple of the mixed income buildings under construction, the next area of focus.
Thank you.
Elizabeth has up on the screen an aerial that shows the red brick building is where the parking lot would go, which is a former car wash.
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you. I'll open up the public hearing on these two cases together, 1512 Fuller and 1534 Kalamazoo Ave. If you're here today on this case, please come forward, state your name, and share your brief thoughts with us. All right, I'll close the public hearing. Turn to commissioners and staff to see if there are other questions for the applicant or discussion.
I applaud the work of, I don't know if they spoke to it, but the years-long engagement with the community and building a multi-purpose uses, including the daycare center, as well as community space, to really start to anchor more of this community and complement the other housing development and beautiful landscaping that's going to go along. So I'm in support of this project.
Yeah, same. And as far as the parking lot goes, I appreciate the working with staff regarding the pedestrian crossing and monitoring that when changes happen to Fuller to make sure that we are facilitating safe crossing for pedestrians from that parking lot into this development. I'm also comfortable with the parking waiver based on the transit service that's there and the on-street parking available. But yeah, I'm in support of the project as well.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Joseph, and I'm also comfortable with the transparency waiver. It looks like the applicant is working hard in light of the internal uses to create additional transparency, and that they've articulated sufficient explanation on why they can't create the necessary transparency under the standard on the south elevation. So I'm comfortable with that waiver as well. All right.
That was my one and only concern, and I agree that it's been adequately addressed. Also noting that there's a electrical substation right across the street, which wouldn't make for such a great view from within the building, but of course pedestrians traveling along that south wall would still not have a great experience, and I appreciate the suggestion of enhancing landscape there if we can.
All right, I'm happy to make a motion. And just to be clear, I'm making motions both. I don't need to call for a second for each. Separately, okay. Awesome. Now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Commission approves the request of Amplified GR John Ippel for special land use approval to construct a surface parking lot at 1512 Fuller Avenue Southeast for the following reasons. The proposed use will be consistent with the purpose and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance, including the zone district, because the project will support the off-street parking improvement strategy within the Southtown Business Area Specific Plan. The project supports the parking requirements associated with the mixed-use development to the northwest proposed by the applicant. 2, that the proposed use will meet the site plan review standards of section 5.12.8.e because the development will be designed to meet all standards. 3A, the proposed use will be compatible, harmonious, and appropriate with the character and uses of the neighborhood, adjacent properties, and the natural environment because the proposed use will limit the need for on-street parking within the adjacent residential neighborhoods. 3B, potentially adverse effects arising from the proposed use on the neighborhood and adjacent properties will be minimized through adequate parking lot screening and landscaping. 3C, the proposed use will not be detrimental, hazardous, or disturbing to existing or future uses or to the public welfare because the proposed use is not anticipated to result in excessive noise, glare, or visual clutter. 3D, the proposed use will not adversely affect the walkability of the neighborhood, impair pedestrian circulation patterns, disrupt the continuity of the urban street wall, or otherwise hinder the creation of the pedestrian-oriented environment because appropriate site improvements have been proposed to facilitate safe and efficient pedestrian circulation, and the proposed parking lot screening will help reestablish the street wall. And 5, the proposed use will not be detrimental to the financial stability or economic welfare of the city because the proposed use will allow redevelopment of a vacant structure. Be it further resolved that the following conditions of approval shall apply to the project. Standard conditions set A for approvals, which is on the screen, but I'll read them. 1, that the application and plans submitted by the applicant, signed, dated, and stamped by the planning director shall constitute the approved plans, except if plan elements do not meet ordinance requirements and/or as amended in this resolution. 2, that the use shall operate according to the application and per testimony as recorded in the Planning Commission minutes. 3, that this approval does not include any proposed signs, and any future signs shall be subject to the requirements of Article 15 of the ordinance and permits received prior to installation. 4, that a land use development services or LUDS permit, building permit, and all other required permits be obtained from the City of Grand Rapids prior to construction, demolition, or operation. 5, that any expansion of the approved special land use requires an additional special land use review and approval by the Planning Commission. 6, that the proposed use will comply with all other applicable city ordinances and policies and state laws. And 7, that this approval shall take effect 16 calendar days after the date of the Planning Commission's decision.
Support.
All right, we have motion support. Any discussion on that? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion passes.
Now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Commission approves the special land use request of Amplified GR John Ippel to renovate and expand an existing building for uses including medical office, a child care center, community center, and banquet facility at 1534 Kalamazoo Avenue Southeast for the following reasons. The proposed use will be consistent with the purpose and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance, including the zone district, because the proposed use will support the purpose and intent of the TNTBA zone district to encourage a mix of uses in a commercial area and support the goals of the Southtown Business Area Specific Plan to be a more stable and thriving business community without displacement by encouraging supportive reuse of underutilized spaces and be a more vibrant place to work, shop, play, learn, live, and do business. 2, the proposed use will meet the site plan review standards of section 5.12.8.e because the site substantially conforms to the TNTBA site layout requirements and the building will be brought closer to conformity with current building element requirements. 3A, the proposed use will be compatible, harmonious, and appropriate with the character and uses of the neighborhood, adjacent properties, and the natural environment because the proposed uses will be consistent with the desired mixed-use nature of neighborhood and will provide desired amenities in this neighborhood. The use will activate an underutilized site. 3B, potentially adverse effects arising from the proposed uses will be minimized because adequate parking will be provided and the building services are intended to support the residents of the proposed residential developments to the north. 3C, the proposed use will not be detrimental, hazardous, or disturbing to existing or future uses or to the public welfare by reason of excessive traffic, noise, smoke, odors, glare, or visual clutter because all uses will occur indoors and assembly events will cease by 11 p.m. 3D, the proposed use will not adversely affect the walkability of the neighborhood, impair pedestrian circulation patterns, disrupt the continuity of the urban street wall, or otherwise hinder the creation of a pedestrian-oriented environment because the mix of uses and the building's orientation to the proposed public park will contribute to the walkability of the business district. 5A, the proposed use will safeguard the health, safety, and general welfare of the public because the site is currently improved with public infrastructure capable of handling the proposed use, and any private infrastructure will be provided at the developer's expense. 5B, the proposed use will not be detrimental to the financial stability or economic welfare of the city because this use is not anticipated to result in nuisances that require excessive code enforcement actions given the proposed scale, hours, and location, and the use will encourage other investment in the area. Given the character, location, development trends, and other aspects of the neighborhood, it is demonstrated that the area is underserved by the proposed alcohol service use and that the proposed location for alcohol sales will demonstrably be an asset to the neighborhood because, as proposed, the use will be unique as compared to existing uses in the neighborhood. The use or change in use is constructed and operated by the applicant is compatible with the neighborhood because the proposed hours of operation are consistent with other establishments in the vicinity. The operator and or her designee will be on the premises during events, and the conditions of the special land use approval will limit nuisances that require police or code enforcement actions. Adjacent or nearby parks, playgrounds, religious institutions, or schools will not be adversely affected because no outdoor alcohol service is proposed and there will be no sale of alcohol for off-site consumption. The use is proposed to be operated by the applicant will not have any or minimal negative secondary effects on the neighborhood because the applicant has procedures prepared so that the use will be operated in a manner that has the potential to minimize or eliminate negative secondary effects on the neighborhood. Be it further resolved that the following conditions of approval shall apply to this project. Standard conditions set A, which have previously been read but are on the screen for your review. 2, that all right-of-way improvements are subject to review by the engineering department of the city of Grand Rapids. That the proposed access to the parking lot is contingent upon the improvement of the construction of the Evergreen Street extension. 4, that construction phasing and parking shall be coordinated so that the construction of both on and off-site parking lots intended for the proposed uses adequately support the parking requirements of the project. 5, that events shall cease by 11 p.m. 7 days a week with the facility vacated by 12 a.m. Exceptions are New Year's Eve events may operate until 12:30 a.m. with the facility vacated by 1 a.m. 6, that music and dancing incidental to a private event may be permitted, but there shall be no events or ticket sales to the general public, at which admission is charged at the door. 7, that the operator and or his or her designee shall be on the premises during all events. 8, that the event space may accommodate up to 240 individuals, subject to occupancy determination by the city's building official and applicable building and fire codes. 9, that a noise analysis shall be conducted by a qualified engineer, and if necessary, the building shall be soundproof to meet the requirements of the Noise Control Ordinance, Chapter 151, Article 5 of the City Code. And 10, that the facility rental agreement shall include prohibitions on congregating, loitering, and the consumption of alcoholic beverages in the parking lot and shall discourage parking within the residential neighborhoods in the vicinity.
Support.
All right, we have motion and support. Any discussion?
Would you entertain a condition about the landscaping to mitigate for the transparency?
Yes, so the applicant is required to provide additional landscaping along the south elevation adjacent to the sidewalk.
Between the sidewalk and face of building, subject to review and approval by the planning director?
Sounds good.
Still support.
Okay, anything else? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. Thank you. Our next case is 670 Burton Street Southeast and 2080 Union Ave Southeast.
You may recall that last December, the Planning Commission considered this project. It involved the establishment of a new planned redevelopment district to facilitate a 4-story office building for the use of Bethany Christian Services and approval of 42 site condominiums to be improved with single-family homes. That was subsequently approved by the City Commission. And there were conditions of approval that the building elevations come back to the Planning Commission and for your review and approval through site plan review, and that those elevations shall reflect the character of the built environment in the vicinity. So today, the applicant is presenting those elevations as well as two changes to the site plan that are being incorporated as site plan review amendments. One is site plan review for a minor change for building locations and for amendments to the site condominium plan to establish shared open space and sidewalk reconfigurations. What is shown on your screen here is what was approved by the Planning Commission. The area in question is mostly this dark green area, and that is the dwelling place portion of the development. This the parking lot in the lighter green is the Bethany Christian Services portion. Let's see here. I'll talk about these site elements that are being proposed, the changes that are proposed, and I'll defer to the applicant to provide you an overview of the details of the building elevations. So what is before you here is the proposed changes. I think I will try to zoom in. Maybe, there I go. Okay, so what you can see on the screen, this, the sort of pink hatched area, that area is a 5-foot area that is proposed for a minimum and a maximum setback. Previously, or as approved, there was a required building line. So all the fronts of the buildings needed to line up with the front of that building line. The applicant I'll let them explain why, but they felt that they needed a little more flexibility in the location of the building. So they're proposing this 5-foot area in which the building can be set. So that would be the front of the building would be located either at the front or no further back than the back, 5-foot back from that area. The other areas of consideration are what's shown here. We've got this community courtyard, and I have a couple of actually, I think I have a couple of slides that better show that. So this is what was approved. There was lot lines and with the sidewalk. And now this sort of split sidewalk is proposed in the area shown, and that will result in some community green space. Also, the other change that is proposed is, as you can see in the area that I'm pointing to, the sidewalk is on the Bethany property, and the applicant is now proposing that the lot line be shifted slightly so that the sidewalk will be on the dwelling place property. And I'll defer to the applicant to talk about the rationale behind that. As I said, I'd like to have the applicant talk about the building elevations. But while I'm up, did you have any questions for me on what I've talked about?
Thanks, Elizabeth. Any questions? Okay.
Okay, sorry,
Go
just
ahead.
one. Elizabeth, can you confirm the setbacks of the buildings that we were giving a little bit more grace so that there's 5 feet? Did you touch on that? Oh, I'm sorry, I missed it then. Never mind. If you clarified it for the commission, that's fine. Thanks.
I have one question. So in the staff report, there's talk about the maintenance of this common green space, and is that something the applicants provided or can address during their presentation?
I'll defer to the applicant to address that, if I may.
All right, thanks, Elizabeth. We'll have the applicants up then if there's more details you want to share with us.
Feel free to advance yourself, and it's in the same order that was presented.
Hi, Jeremy DeRue, CUI Dwelling Place. I'm going to just do a very brief introduction and then have our architect come forward that led this process for us again. In terms of the question regarding the green space that is being created, the common space, it will be treated similar to how the other common green space is on the property. No, it's a site condo, so there will be a small condo fee associated with it and will be maintained through that process. And so again, since we were last before you, we did have a series of community engagement sessions. We had a session specifically for near neighbors, some for low-income buyers who are looking at purchasing the property, and some for the neighborhood in general to solicit feedback. Most of the changes that are being proposed here are a result of what we heard in those sessions. I do want to just compliment Kim Nestorter and the architecture work that he did here of both the process that he utilized to listen to communities and incorporate feedback into these plans. I think he was able to produce something that reflected a lot of the character that exists in the neighborhood now, is bringing it into this proposed development. And throughout the process, we heard positive feedback from residents who were engaged with us over this process. And some of the residents who had previously come here and spoke against the project were advocates. We intentionally reached out to those who had oppositional voices in us, invited them to be part of this process, and a number of them did compliment the final results of this. And I am excited to have people move into these homes and welcome my new neighbors into the neighborhood. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kim to talk about some of the changes that came through this process.
Can I operate this thing? Absolutely. Okay.
It might be easiest just to advance like that, go back like that.
Okay.
And you can use this.
Advance like this?
Like that.
All right.
And you can use the mouse as a pointer.
Very good.
Okay.
Some of the major input we got from the neighbors was, we like our neighborhood because every house is different. So reacting to that, we have 5 different designs. We can't have 42 different designs. That's unworkable. But 5 different designs, and each one of those designs can have different color schemes, so that the look would be different. And if there's 11 houses in a row, there's not any real repetition there. You might have the same house design, but probably not the same colors. The other thing that the neighbors heard, and I heard this at the last meeting, Planning Commission meeting, was the wind chill. They thought, I don't want to be looking at the sides of houses across my street. So I'm going to address that with, it's moving, I don't know what. You are moving. I need the bird's eye. Yeah, so what we did there was, the first lots on Winchell have some side yard depth. So we can't just turn, based on the site plan, we can't just turn all the houses to face Winchell. So what we did was, in that 20-foot setback, we provide screening so that you're not looking directly into the side yards and backyards of these homes. You have more of a green space view from your house on Winchell. And then what we did was open up the courtyard as a visual connection to the neighborhood. I'm going to go forward now. So the other reason we needed that flexibility on the setback was particularly on Martin, the setback was bringing the homes really close to the street, and the homes across the street weren't that close. So to fit in with the neighborhood a little bit better, a little bit more gracious setback seemed to be more appropriate there. So this is look down, a typical view down Martin. And this is kind of showing some of the screening that we would do on Winchell. This is an artist rendering. We're still working on that, but that's the concept. So then when you get to the courtyard, where it's the most desirable view into the complex, we open that up and that is not screened. So the people from the neighborhood can see into that courtyard. And this is the view of the courtyard. We did split it up so that one of the comments was, I want my little boy to be able to go out in the front and play, and I can see him. And if there's a sidewalk right down the middle, there's really no place for that child to do that. So I believe that splitting the sidewalk really generates a lot more opportunity for community and neighbors to get together. This is the view of the courtyard, which is toward Union. It's the green space there that was provided. The alley, I'm calling it an alley, it's really a street, but kind of functions both ways. And this is one of the typical homes, one of the 5. You can see that a house can take on different characters depending on the color scheme. That's a story and a half. There's a lot of story and a half homes in that neighborhood. And I think another thing we heard, and I think he's here. Well, he was. I didn't see him anymore. Is one of the neighbors across the street liked the idea of having a front porch, so that the neighbors would get out there and can see. And I think you're being planning commissioners, you understand the importance of a front porch. So this is a typical site plan for each individual home. They'll either have a garage or a shed, 8x10 shed, which is in the requirements. So this is a typical floor plan of a 1-story, which will be used more for people with physical challenges. So we have a 1-story that's just under 900 or 1,000 square feet. This is a story and a half. There was a fair amount of gambrel roof designs in the neighborhood, so one of the 5 has that. This is the same one you saw before, a story and a half. There are basements on all of these, so the homeowner has the option to finish those off at a later time. One of the other designs, and this is the 5th one, which is 3 bedrooms up and living space down. Materials. There's a combination of vinyl siding, and then I'll use my pointer here. We've given the opportunity to kind of customize with the color with painting. You're a little bit limited with vinyl colors. There's a lot of them, but there's like a band here that we could, accent. Not all the designs have that, but some of them do. It's vinyl siding. This is customized. This is a fiberglass door. We added a little bit of extra trim in the front on this particular design. That is not dissimilar to some of the details in the neighborhood. Oh, going the wrong way again. And I guess I'd like to open it up for questions if you have them.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, questions on architecture at this time? All right.
All right. Thank you.
Wait, I do have a question. Sorry. First, a comment. I appreciate all the effort that went into the creation of the architectural elevations. I personally think they're beautiful buildings. I'm wondering, and maybe this is a question for Jeremy or David, but I'm wondering how prescriptive is the condominium document? Meaning, if an individual comes in and buys one of the site condominiums, they have this palette to choose from. Is that correct? So when we are beginning our construction permitting of these homes, these are the renderings that we will be evaluating those plans from. And so I think it's going to be really important that your condominium documents are very prescriptive. And also if there's statements about color variation and/or model variation, that is also prescribed in the condominium documents. I'm seeing head nods, yes. Okay.
I can't say that's totally finalized, but we were talking about having 3 different color schemes, but that we didn't really finalize that.
Yeah. I feel less concerned about the color variations and such, but I think that the detail that you've shown on these plans is truly what is going to make these homes compatible with the neighborhood. So what I'm making sure is that we're not going to see some value engineering during the construction permitting where we're seeing banding and trim work be eliminated from the project, because I think that that's unfair to the community and quite frankly to the Planning Commission. So
I appreciate your protecting the architecture here.
I figured you might.
These are the designs we've been pricing out, and then we've gotten construction pricing back even in the current environment that this is what we can afford to build. So there is not kind of an anticipated value engineering that's going to be changing these significantly. This is what we are proposing to do. I really respect the process that Kim went through and engaged the community and the details in the homes around them are what makes the homes around them and makes the character of the neighborhood, and that is our intention to continue to be able to reflect that in these designs here.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you. I'll open up the public hearing. If you're here today about this case at 670 Burton and 2080 Union, please come forward, state your name, and share your brief thoughts with us. All right, close the public hearing. Turn to commissioners. Any discussion on these changes?
I think that the work that's been done to get to this point is fantastic, and I appreciate all the extra effort they went to engage the neighborhood and the designs they came up with, and in looking at the character of the surrounding neighborhood, I think these renderings really reflect that. So I am very supportive, and I appreciate the slight site change too with the sidewalk and creating that extra green space that's common, and yeah, I'm in full support and happy to make a motion whenever.
I will second that. Support it.
Okay. Now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Commission approves the request of Dwelling Place David DeVelder for final site plan review of the building designs, a minor change to the approved development for setback regulations and modifications to the site condominium plan to establish shared open space and a sidewalk reconfiguration at 670 Burton Street Southeast and 2080 Union Avenue Southeast for the following reasons. The proposed development will meet the purpose and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance because this would be an appropriate use of the property as a support for residential purposes. It's consistent with the purpose and intent of the plan redevelopment districts to encourage a sensitive design that respects the neighborhood character as well as natural or man-made features of the site and surrounding area, and promotes quality design and environmentally sensitive development. The site is designed to comply with all provisions of the zoning ordinance because the proposed setback modifications provide the flexibility for slight deviations that exist in the built environment in the vicinity. The proposed site will be developed so as not to impede the normal and orderly development or improvement of surrounding property for uses permitted by this chapter because the proposed buildings will be scaled, massed, oriented, sited, and architecturally designed in a manner consistent and sensitive to other development in the vicinity, and the proposed building design and high-quality materials meet the characteristics important of planned redevelopment districts. All elements of the site design are harmoniously and efficiently organized in relation to topography, the size and type of lot, character of the neighborhood and adjoining property, and the type, size, and proportions of buildings, because although the revised sidewalk locations are in the same general locations as originally approved, the revised sidewalk arrangement will facilitate a sense of community. The arrangement of public or common ways for pedestrian circulation respects the pattern of existing or planned streets and pedestrian or bicycle pathways in the area. Safe, convenient, and well-defined pedestrian circulation within and to and from the site will be provided because, the driveways, streets, and other elements are designed to promote safe and efficient movement within the site and at its access points. Be it further resolved that the following conditions of approval shall apply to this project. Standard condition set A, approvals, which will show up on the screen momentarily. Striking 5 and 7 from that standard set. And 2, that this approval shall take effect after the date of the Planning Commission's decision.
Support.
Commissioner Shannon, was that you supporting?
No, it was me.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I just heard it. All right, we have a motion and support. Any final discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. Thank you. All right, our next case is 2200 Griggs Ave Southeast.
Okay. So the applicant for Oxford Hamlet is requesting an amendment to the previously approved site plan for Breton Hamlet, which is a multifamily development of 48 dwelling units on about 7 acres. The Planning Commission approved special land use and site plan review to construct 42 attached and 6 detached single-family dwellings in August of 2020. Site amenities included a community building and shuffleboard court, and in the area that's highlighted here on the screen, that would be located near the north lot line between the wetland area and that's going to be retained and the 6-unit Muse Court building. The applicant is now requesting site plan review to amend the previously approved site plan to replace the community building and shuffleboard court with a pickleball court and a pergola. The applicant has submitted a photo of the pergola, and the modification will result in a very slight increase in green space, 686 square feet. 2 rows of evergreen trees are proposed to buffer the 30 by 60 pickleball court. The tree canopy plan is otherwise not affected by this change. And I'm not sure if I did include it in the recommended conditions of approval, but we would recommend reiterating that the Planning Commission reiterate the condition that the construction of the pickleball court and the pergola shall be performed in a manner that will not disturb the 25-foot natural features protection area. The applicant did conduct outreach with the property owner to the north, and that the couple that lives in that home have submitted a letter of support for this change. And so key considerations would be whether this still comports with the purpose and intent of the original approval. Did you have any questions for me before I turn it over to the applicant?
Thanks, Elizabeth. Commissioners, any questions?
I have one. I'm sorry that I don't have all of the zoning code memorized yet, but if years down the road they wanted to change this from a pickleball court to a tennis court, does that require planning commission approval to make those kinds of changes? I mean, does it have to be this specific, I guess, is my question.
Well, I don't play tennis or pickleball, but I believe a tennis court is a much larger court, right? So the answer would probably be yes, because then it would necessitate some site changes.
Okay.
Right? I think the issue here is that, previously it was shuffleboard court, whatever it is. And I think we felt that, there's a lot more noise and activity associated with this kind of game that could be bothersome to neighbors. So that was one of the reasons that we felt it was important that the Planning Commission consider this change.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions, I'll invite the applicant up if there's anything else you want to share with us.
Hi, thank you for hearing this. My name is Brad Rothschieffer with Mosaic Properties. I don't have a lot to add other than kind of the background and history of how this happened. The Spearlings who live to the north, who actually kind of encompass part of the wetland in this area, contacted me roughly 6 months ago with concerns about the shuffleboard court, how close it is to their property line. And I said, okay, well, we're kind of considering what our amenity package is anyway. So let us put some thought into it and we'll have a meeting. So we met with them and said, hey, we would, pickleball is such a popular thing now. We'd consider doing this and it'll, pull the line away from your house and we'll be able to get some more trees in, and they were in support of it. So I don't have anything more really to add to that, but that's kind of the history of how this conversation got started.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? Kristen?
Is there a fence around the pickleball court?
Yeah.
How high?
How high do they have to be?
I have absolutely no idea. The reason I'm asking is because typically the planning commission is limited to about a 6-foot tall fence. So if there is a fence that would be taller, which I presume at least in tennis there is.
Maybe on the back.
Just on the back side of the
Backside.
courts.
Yeah. So I just want to make sure that that's part of the understanding so that when we go for permits, that it's clear that the planning commission would anticipate seeing a fence of up to 10 feet in height-ish.
I'm comfortable leaving it up to you and I'm sure there'd be discussion with the neighbor. I'm only concerned about that neighboring property. If they have an objection to it, then I suppose. But I assume they don't want the balls flying over into their yard constantly, so.
I think, the evergreen trees would likely mitigate the impact of what I presume would be a chain link fence of sorts. Again, it's just, within the ordinance, we're somewhat limited. There are departures, but typically when it's association with a larger planning commission discussion, then we prefer to have the discussion.
Those limits also exist internal on the property? So it's not just kind of at the property line where you would have those limits?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So we should expect that there'd be a fence along that north side of up to approximately 10 feet to
Okay.
block poor pickleball players, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I would expect maybe on the south side too, just the front and the backs of each side of the court. So the people in the pergola aren't getting hit by balls either.
Okay, I'll open up the public hearing. If you're here today on this case, please come forward, state your name and share your thoughts with us. Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, any other comments or discussion? Pickleballers
I think
is
that
the term.
Yeah, I think that this is a great change. Yeah, I mean, as the applicant said, pickleball has become wildly popular, and yeah, it's a hot sport right now. And I think the concept of the pergola and the photos that they submitted in their package as to what they're thinking about, I think that looks beautiful. And yeah, I'm in full support of approving all of this, including the appropriate height of fences to mitigate balls leaving the court.
It's pretty clear to me that nobody here has played pickleball.
I have played pickleball.
Upon further review.
I got pickleball things for Christmas from my parents. So.
I'm supportive of this project. I think everything we covered is relevant. I don't think there's any imminent danger of the neighbors and the pickleballs, as previously mentioned.
You haven't played with me, clearly.
Well, there's a lot more to discuss and unpack about that. But I think I'm supportive of this project, and I would like to see some kind of, I guess, discussion. If you've gone to the depth of talking with the neighbor already, then that backsplash sort of idea is prudent.
I can make a motion. Unless somebody else wants to. No, all right. Now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Commission approves the site plan review request of Oxford Hamlet LLC, Brad Rothschafer, for approval to amend the previously approved site plan to replace the approved community building and shuffleboard court with a pickleball court and pergola at 2200 Griggs Ave Southeast for the following reasons. The proposed development will meet the purpose and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance because the change will reinforce and support the desired character for this development with the proposed use, site design, and building elements. The site is designed to comply with all provisions of the zoning ordinance because adequate buffering between the uses is proposed, and the revision is generally consistent with the approved plan. The proposed site will be developed so as not to impede the normal and orderly development or improvement of surrounding property for uses permitted by this chapter, because the proposed changes will be oriented, sited, and architecturally designed in a manner sensitive to other development in the vicinity. All elements of the site design are harmoniously and efficiently organized in relation to topography, the size and type of lot, character of the neighborhood and adjoining property, and the type, size, and proportions of buildings, because the court will be sited with adequate setbacks from the adjacent low-density residential uses. Natural features and site topography are incorporated into the proposed site design to the maximum extent practicable, because the proposed change will respect the required wetland setback. Buildings and structures are placed in a manner that preserves and protects environmentally sensitive areas because natural features and site topography are incorporated into the proposed site design to the maximum extent practicable. And landscape buffers or greenbelts are provided that ensure the proposed uses are adequately buffered from one another from surrounding public and private property because a significant landscape buffer is proposed between the development and the adjacent low-density development to the north. Be it further resolved that the following conditions of approval shall apply. Standard conditions at A, approval striking 5 and 7. 2, that this approval shall take effect after the date of the Planning Commission's decision. 3, that construction of the pergola and pickleball court shall be performed in a manner that will not disturb the 25-foot natural feature protection area. Do you want a condition about the fence, or have we covered it?
Just getting it on record is I'm comfortable with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then that concludes my motion.
Support. Commissioner Wallace beat me to it.
All right, we have a motion and support. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion passes. Thank you. Our last case is 816 Madison Ave Southeast. Commissioner Beeler will be leaving us. Farewell.
Okay, so today the Women's Resource Center is requesting special land use approval to establish a social services facility in a TN LDR zone district to provide job training, peer mentoring, and professional development to women. Associated improvements will include interior and exterior renovations to the existing building, as well as the parking lot. Additionally, there is also an 842 square foot two-story addition to the southeast corner of the existing building. As you can see, the surrounding properties are entirely made up of medium-low density residential uses. However, just to the north here, we have the ICCF social service is located there. The future land use map did identify this area as medium-low density residential, as I stated, and uniquely, this proposed use also complements one of the priority objectives that are outlined in the strategic plan, which speak to increasing residents' educational attainment, employment, and wage growth, and also supports employment and workforce development efforts in historically marginalized communities. Let's see. The existing building, which was built in the late 1800s, originally served as engine house number 7 for the Grand Rapids Fire Department. Over time, this property has served as an office space as well as a youth camp, both of which were obtained through a variance and special land use, respectively. The existing two-story building is approximately 3,472 square feet, where we have parking lot accessed just right here off of Madison. It's both ingress and egress. However, there is an automatic remote controlled access gate to the east here that they do plan on using if need be. I'll let them speak to that. And here's a view of the current conditions of the parking lot. And I'd like you to notice the landscape buffering and screening that is now provided. And planning staff does ask that you consider maybe adding a little boost to the green space requirements that we typically see for parking lots here, given that it is adjacent and within a residential area. Like I said, interior renovations are going to take place, and this includes the first floor elevation, or floor plan rather. And here you'll see meeting and teaching spaces, some offices, a reception area, as well as the business boutique. The second floor is about the same. It'll have offices, collaborative open office space here, some training rooms, a flex space, and the a team break room. Going back to this, the proposed site plan does indicate an accessible entry to the southeast corner of the building addition, which will provide the space for the welcome lobby and the business boutique, which is a service that provides donated business attire to the clients that come in to use the service. Additionally, the applicant has indicated that leadership in energy and environmental design, green building requirements will be applied to the greatest extent possible, which would include design elements that protect water efficiency, energy use and pollution mitigation, and reuse of materials and clean indoor air. In terms of the green site elements that I spoke to previously, there are no proposed changes to green space elements at grade. However, the proposed site plan does include an 842 square foot green roof on the building addition for stormwater mitigation and essentially to bring the site closer in conformance to the green space requirements of the residential neighborhood. We did want to note that in commercial districts, LEED certification can provide a reduction to the green space requirement here. However, that's not necessarily true in a residential zone. So we'd like you just to consider the use and how it relates to a commercial use. The Planning Commission may grant a waiver for the remaining green space as the existing is only about 23%. They'll need 30% to meet the requirement. And I will defer to the architect of this project to expand on their LEED certification conversations with the consultants. The Women's Resource Center intends to move to this location mostly because they were having structural issues at their previous site, but more importantly, they wanted to be located closer to the clients they serve. Currently, they serve mostly women in the 49507 and 49506 zip code, where there are also several community partners located within the vicinity, which you can see on this map here. So, as I mentioned, there's ICCF Homes to the north. We have a community food club, as well as the Center for Community Transformation, both to the west and the south of the proposed site. The proposed hours of operation would be typical business hours. Another important thing to mention is that they'll have 12 to 15 employees. However, approximately 60 to 70% of those employees will be on site at any given time, the others working remotely. So in terms of parking, you're looking at about anywhere from 7 to 10 of those spaces to be full at all times. Let's see. They do meet the parking requirement of 14 spaces, which is exactly what is proposed. They did lose a space so that they could meet some ADA requirements for the barrier-free parking space. And that calculation was also based on assuming the full-time employees who use the office space are also the employees that are doing the educational coursework in the classrooms and offices. Additionally, there is on-street parking available on the adjacent streets, and we do have a rapid, I believe it's Route 3 stop located just outside the front door of this building. No letters of support or opposition have been received. However, the planning staff did encourage the applicant to reach out to not only the adjacent neighbors in the area, but also the neighborhood association group, Seeds of Promise. We've not been informed that there is any direct engagement with those neighbors or those groups. However, last month they did hold an event to receive feedback from some of the clients and participants of the WRC. If the proposed use is approved today, WRC will host a community open house to engage with neighbors and community partners within the Madison and MLK Junior community. So in sum, I'd like you to consider the appropriateness and compatibility of a social service facility here in the zone district, adequate green space site elements to fulfill the green space requirements, as well as the adequate and proactive community engagement and neighborhood outreach.
All right, thank you. Any questions for staff?
Yeah, just a couple. So when you talked about parking lot screening, does the current screening level meet requirements and you are recommending that we have more, or does it not meet and we should just require them to meet the screening for the parking lot?
So currently they're at about 23%, and the TNLDR zone district calls for 30%. Okay. They had indicated that with a green roof, that would supplement the requirement. However, in residential zone districts, there's no language about green roofs adding to that requirement.
I'm so sorry. I misspoke. I said green space. I meant the parking lot screening. So when you were on that picture, you said, look at this, and staff's recommending more screening. And so I guess I'm wondering if the screening level is adequate for what the zoning ordinance says at this point or not.
I was going to suggest that if there is a question, that perhaps we just conduct an analysis to determine whether the parking lot screening is deficient, and if it is deficient per current code requirements, and if it is, that additional landscaping be required to ensure compliance.
Okay, great.
Unless Sarah's already conducted that review, I wasn't sure.
It technically does meet the requirements. However, given the condition of the photo that I'm providing here, we recommend that maybe you guys, that the commission considers adding a landscape buffer or screening addition to what's already there.
And then, do we know if the materials on the addition, I mean, that can be confirmed at permitting, right? That they meet requirements? Okay.
And so there's no trash dumpster being proposed?
There is not on site.
Do we know how trash is being handled?
I will defer to the applicant to discuss on that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Sarah. All right, I'll invite the applicant up if there's other details you want to share with us.
Good afternoon. I'm Sandra Gaddy. I'm CEO of Women's Resource Center. Do you want me to address the trash first? Sure. Okay. Currently, well, we're not in the building, but currently there is a city container that's out there. It's empty, a little empty right now, but to my knowledge, they would come where the gate, the remote gate was, and pick up from there. So I can get more knowledge from ICCF or Monarch Investments, who was the previous owner on the trash collection.
Okay. Were there other specific questions that you had, or do you think we can just condition it as, okay? Is there anything else you want to share with us?
Yes, we have scheduled for the open house for the community is scheduled actually for Tuesday, July 19th. And that's going to be from 5:30 to 7:30. Our architectural partner and construction company will be there with our team to answer some of the questions. And I'll just elaborate a little bit more. We have sent out letters to our community partners. Many of them was there at our late April public announcement for our capital campaign. And we have tremendous community support through our capital campaign portion and tremendous support from the nonprofit community partners that are locally within blocks or within just a couple of miles away.
What about direct engagement with the folks that are surrounding your property more closely?
Yeah, we're going to have the open house on Tuesday, July 19th. And that's where we're going to have the open house there, but we're going to also have a survey as individuals are coming in so that we can not only determine if the programs and services that we are presenting to them right now is meeting their needs, but what other needs that they may have within their families and these women for workplace, training, education to incorporate into our programs and services.
I see elevations for a couple of the sides of the building. I'm curious, will the front elevation change at all or just simply be kind of touched up?
Yes, good afternoon. Kirsten Renschke from Architectura, Grand Haven. And here is the architect for the applicant, so I can speak to those questions. No, the intent is not to change anything on that Madison facade, so windows will be maintained. If anything, we may look at those doors that you saw in the original photo, might try to update those just to give them an opportunity to use that space, but for the most part, we're maintaining all the brick. And the materials that we're proposing for the addition are brick and glass to not necessarily blend in, because we don't believe we can find a true match to what was there, but also don't necessarily want to take away from the character and the historicness of the building. And then a little bit of metal accent. You kind of see, kind of highlighted right now in green, just to kind of show a new entry canopy a little bit there in the southwest corner.
There will be an entrance on the Madison side though, right?
Correct. We are not voiding that one. That one's staying as is. We're just providing another ADA accessible entrance. So.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Elizabeth mentioned the gate. Oh, I'm sorry, it wasn't Elizabeth, sorry. Mentioned the electric gate. Is that going to stay and be utilized?
At this time, it's intended to stay.
Okay.
And if I can just add one more thing about the neighborhood, we're actually, my teammate reminded me that we're doing neighborhood canvassing prior to the open house, so we'll reach out to the neighbors prior to having the event so that we can make them aware well in advance too.
All right, great, thank you. If there's no other questions, I'll do the public hearing. Okay, I'll open up the public hearing. If you're here today on this case, come forward and state your name and share your brief thoughts with us. Okay, close the public hearing. Commissioners, any thoughts on this?
I appreciate two things knowing about the Women's Resource Center. One, always like to see a historic building reutilized and updated and stay in the community as it was, but repurposed. Secondly, I applaud efforts to move to where your clients are and add value to the neighborhood, both in your services, but in using a vacant building like this. So I am in support of this project. I think it will be wonderful for our community, and I'm willing to make a motion.
Yeah, I'll let you make that motion, but I do want to say that I do appreciate this project and I love this building and I'm glad to see it's going to be active. I would have liked to see more engagement with the direct community before we came here to make this decision, just so they had an opportunity to look at it instead of engagement after the fact. But I think it's a completely appropriate use for this location, and I'm also in support. So go ahead, Commissioner Shannon.
Now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Commission approves the special land use request of the Women's Resource Center, Sandra Gaddy, to operate a social service facility at 816 Madison Avenue Southeast for the following reasons. One, the proposed use will be consistent with the purpose and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance, including the zone district, because the proposed use will provide social services for convenience of residents in the vicinity and support and complement objectives in the current strategic plan that outline the need to increase residents' education, attainment, employment, and wage growth. Two, the proposed use does meet the site plan review standards of section 512.08.e because adequate ingress and egress to the site and building is provided. The site layout is arranged so as to permit access for clients, employees, and emergency vehicles by practical means. 3A, the proposed use would be compatible, harmonious, and appropriate with the existing or planned character and uses the neighborhood, adjacent properties, and natural environment because activity associated with the proposed use is not anticipated to impose a burden on other uses in the area. The proposed use will complement and provide support for both residential and community-oriented services and uses within the neighborhood. The proposed use is intended to serve community members within the surrounding neighborhood. The proposed use will not have adverse effects on the neighborhood because appropriate landscape buffering and fencing exist on site and will remain in place to ensure effective buffering and screening from the public right-of-way. The proposed use would not be detrimental, hazardous, or disturbing to existing or future uses or to the public welfare by reason of excessive traffic, noise, smoke, odors, glare, visual clutter, and electrical or electromagnetic interference because the traffic generated by the use will be minimal and will only occur during business hours. No outdoor or late evening activities are to be conducted. The proposed building elements and function will be influenced by lead regulations and standards to limit general pollution. The proposed use would not adversely affect the walkability of the neighborhood, impair pedestrian circulation patterns, disrupt the continuity of the urban street wall, or otherwise hinder the creation of a pedestrian-oriented neighborhood because the proposed site plan indicates appropriate pedestrian access from both the parking lot and Madison Avenue. No additional site design elements are proposed that would impede on pedestrian circulation or the public right-of-way. Number 4, the building and site area required for the proposed use will retain as many natural features of the landscape as practical, particularly where the natural features assist in preserving the general character of the neighborhood. Because existing green space will remain in place and the added green roof will bring the site closer in conformance to the zoning ordinance green space requirements.
Unknown caller.
Oh my gosh, I thought I turned this off. Sorry. The proposed use will not be detrimental to the facility, financial facility or economic welfare of the city because the use is not anticipated to create new...
Unknown caller.
I'm sorry, I was on 5B, I think. The proposed use will not be detrimental to the financial stability or economic welfare of the city because the use is not anticipated to create nuisances that will require additional city services. Be it further resolved that the following conditions of approval shall apply to the project. Number 1, standard conditions, set A approvals that I think are on the screen, and that is the resolution. Did you need me to add anything about additional screening? Additional landscape screening?
If you feel, it sounds like that the current landscaping provided meets code, but it perhaps looks a little tired and that we've lost a couple of trees and such. So I think it's up to the Planning Commission if you feel that additional screening is necessary to maybe offset for the lack of green space on the site.
So I would add that we would ask for additional screening around the perimeter of the parking lot to enhance the existing screening that is there.
Support.
All right, we have a motion and support. Any final discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. Thank you. I'll open up the public comment portion of the meeting. If anyone is here that would like to speak, now's your chance. All right, close public comment. Anything else, commissioners? Okay, then we're adjourned.
There's a whole